Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Your Neck of the Woods. I'm Ward 1 candidate Jacob McGregor, and I am here today with another guest in our series focusing on candidates from races outside Ward 1. Ward 12 candidate Evan Spencer. Evan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jacob. Sure. Yeah. My name is Evan. I hail from the deep southeast community of Mahogany in the Ward 12. I've lived here moving on to 7 years, and I love it. It's embraced me, this quadrant of the city. Got involved right away when I moved down here, volunteering. And so already feels like family and home more than other places I've lived, just because of how we moved down here. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation with you, Jacob. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Gonna be a lot of fun. So I did some looking into you when we were looking at booking you, and you were a pastor for several years.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me if maybe you learned anything from that you're bringing to this campaign?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. I was a pastor for 10 years. I think if I was to boil it down to one thing that I learned over that stretch, it's kind of how to embrace tension. Sorry, I'm getting messages. There we go. How to embrace tension. I was in a community with a variety of views on a whole host of things. Obviously, it was different things we were debating. But being in that place where you have to be a part of a constructive conversation and bear the weight and the stress of conflicting views on a variety of things, I think that's one of the things I'm going to be pulling out is a need to respect those tensions and to really listen, because you can entrench them and quickly head down paths towards antagonism and accusations, or you can begin to unwind and build trust. And I'd like to think that those 10 years helped. I'm not perfect at it, but it sure helped lay a foundation for me to be a listener and to be a servant leader.
It's interesting that you mentioned building trust, because that's sort of been a common theme in our conversations lately, is that Calgarians don't really have that feeling of trust with the current city council. What do you think we could be doing better to build that trust?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that comes to mind immediately is just being able to and listen and take the time to really get to understand other people's perspectives. Well, I think when you have a fresh group of people, like when you think councils, this is more, it's half or more than half is going to be brand new. Certainly would be my hope that there will be time devoted to getting to know the people behind the platforms and understanding the perspectives that they bring, so that when those disagreements inevitably happen, because it would be completely naive to think that we will always see the same way on all the issues.
This is 15 people in a room making decisions. They're not gonna agree on everything. That's impossible. And I'm interested to hear you talk about fresh faces, because obviously your current counselor, Shane Keating, isn't gonna be running. So obviously there will be a new face in Ward 12, and knock on wood, hopefully Ward 1 as well. But what do you think differentiates you from some of the other people running?
So a couple of them have ties to existing political, provincial, and federal political parties. So I believe that municipal politics shouldn't be another angle to exert partisan politics. So I would have had a pretty soft view on that, kind of maybe you shouldn't, but as I've kind of witnessed things over the past couple months. I've grown in my appreciation for the need for municipal politics to be bipartisan, nonpartisan. So there's that. And then, yeah, I think the other two candidates are maybe a little longer in the tooth. I have some energy. I have kids. I'm running in this election, and I have kids. So the decisions I make are going to directly impact them. So, I feel like I bring a slightly fresher perspective, and hopefully can bridge some of those tensions because of it. Because I'll be feeling this. The felt needs of most of Ward 12 is young families with kids. So I will be acquainted with their day-to-day experiences. So
yeah, I think the whole idea of youth being represented on council, or at least somewhat, is very important, because if you look at current council, with the exception of a couple like Jeremy Farkas, who's a bit younger, it's a lot of what you would imagine a political governing body to be, right?
yeah, for sure. Yeah. How old are you, Jacob?
I'm actually 27.
Whoa. Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you for taking this step, man. I love
Yeah,
it.
so to touch on the and thank you very much. I've been that sort of advanced placement social studies love in the whole political and
Yeah.
history realm ever since I was a kid. So this was sort of a natural progression, especially since, like yourself, I've done a lot of volunteer work, both with the Conservative Party up here in the Northwest and with city boards. I was on the advisory committee for accessibility.
Yeah.
You might have even heard me speak at council a couple times around budget week. So, but
Awesome.
yeah, it's funny you mentioned
So you've been
that. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so this for you is a very natural progression. You were watching
A
it
lot
all,
of people would say that,
and
and I hope
yeah,
that comes across to a lot of people this year. Just getting back to what you said about non-partisanness in city politics, even though I identify with the Conservative Party, and people will obviously connect with me on that level, there is a reason we all don't have letters next to our name, right? So I do see this
right,
as more of an independent thing.
yeah,
So in a previous conversation with one of the people you're going to be running against, we sort of came to the conclusion that you can't talk about Ward 12 without talking about the Greenline. So do you want to give me some of your thoughts?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Greenline is super important. I mean, a lot of people that bought homes down here did so when the conversation around the Greenline was less complicated, and it looked like the path to that project happening was a lot clearer than it currently is. So, I mean, it's a felt need for a lot of folks down here in terms of when they think about their kids accessing education, job opportunities, or they commute downtown. I mean, it's a big thing. Like, we are a long ways from downtown, and so getting there and connecting to the rest of the city is really important. And then we also have some pretty massive infrastructure. Like the South Health Campus is world class, and is
the
kind of ruined up
YMCA,
in the
right?
city. Yeah, yeah. So we need, public transit to get to that it would be just in terms of the folks that work there, and then also the folks that need to access that facility. I mean, it's worth it. We got to do this.
No, absolutely. It's interesting though. We've been talking about how the project is, like you said, now pretty complicated, and at the same time pretty amorphous and sort of ethereal. Everybody knows about the Green Line, but nobody really knows what it's gonna look like. So
Yeah.
how um how do you think city council can sort of get the project off the ground, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, they need to keep voting when it's time to vote. And I mean, obviously, the financial picture on it is different now. I mean, I'm quite optimistic that there'll be some certainty before the election. I sure hope so, because there is a risk of this becoming just a total political pawn in this whole election. Because it's easy to, I mean, this is a public infrastructure project, so it's not made to make a profit. It's not made to be, you know, to make sense at the end of the day in terms of ridership numbers and all. Like it is subsidized, just not unlike so many things across our city that are for the public good, for the common good. So I'm worried about it becoming too much of a political football that gets tossed back and
So,
forth.
so in the end, you're saying that it shouldn't be about politics, it should be about getting people to these more underserved parts of our transit system.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just like world-class cities have world-class transit systems. That's just, I mean, obviously the world's changing. But I mean, I don't know. It seems pretty dystopian to me to think of a world that doesn't have a need for public transit. I mean, I don't know if that's a world, maybe that's a world some people want to live in. It's not a world I like. I like the idea of people sharing space with other people and
Uh,
not just
It's been a
jumping in
little
little
harder
autonomous
during
cars.
COVID, obviously.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it seems like some things conspired against this project all at the same
Yeah.
time. So it has a big target on its back, and I think that's really sad. Um,
So,
there's some really good merits to this project.
digging into some more specifics then,
Yeah,
how do you feel about the project potentially crossing the Bow River and the flood mitigation and costs elements involved in that?
yeah, yeah. I mean the alternative alignments that I mean put it on so it makes it much cheaper. Don't go into the middle down into the core. I mean, obviously it's going to be cheaper. I just think of other places, like as soon as you go above grade and as soon as you don't make some of those investments to really embed the infrastructure project into the city, you're going, there's always, it's a trade-off, right? And I just think long term we will regret that. I mean, it hurts right now
Yeah.
to think about billions of dollars when people are having a hard time finding work. But I mean, the world is just like, there's so many examples of infrastructure projects when you look back, and it's so easy to go, well, why didn't they? Why didn't, like, do we want to, like, do we want to be in that place? I mean, I think it makes sense to spend more upfront and to get it right the first time. And things like tunnels are always going to be expensive, right? So can we do it right now? Maybe not. But to scrap that, to
Yeah.
scrap the idea of doing it right and doing it well and embedding it into our downtown core in a way that makes sense and makes it really usable and world class, I don't think we should be throwing out that conversation at all. So I'm definitely not on board with, skirting the downtown and putting the station, out where you're going to have to get on a whole nother line that's already busy and
And
already has issues just to get into the core. So
and you'd be in favor, from what I'm hearing, of doing some of these underground sort of subway style stations.
I mean, when we have funding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
but I know
these
it's fraught with peril. And I've heard, I have uncles that are used to be architects, and they go, Evan, you don't
yeah.
understand how complicated this will be. And
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, I agree. It probably will be quite complicated, and but it would make sense, I think, in the long run to put it below. If we can
Well,
figure out a
and
way to do it. If we can, if we can't, we can't. And right now, I think we're headed more to a reality where we're just going to end up with that south leg, and then we're going to have to get creative about going north.
I think for now, just financially, unless we get some more firm commitments from the province and the feds, that's probably more realistic as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the reason I brought up the underground stations was partly as a jumping off point. I'm a person with a disability. I have cerebral
Right.
palsy and I'm wheelchair bound. So when I think of some of these underground subway style stations, I think of cities like Montreal and Toronto. And obviously, there's the clear age difference in the cities, of course, and when the system was built. But you also
Mhm.
have these accessibility concerns with
Mhm.
these types of stations if you don't build them correctly. So
Yeah. Yeah, my hope would be we get it better, but good point. Yeah, we should be thinking about how all Calgarians would be using this infrastructure.
that's one of the things I also read about you is that you're very passionate about being an inclusive city, which is another reason I sort of bring it up. So what's your how do we make Calgary as inclusive as possible?
Yeah, boy, that's a big question. But I think it starts by trying to understand how different people live in your city and what it feels like to them to live in your city. So I mean, I'm early on my journey on a variety, like for the viewpoints of a variety of groups of people that would, one of the things that permanently changed me was participating in the blanket exercise that shared the history of our Indigenous brothers and sisters, and how our colonial move through the nation, and the way we abused the treaties and the rest. How like it's a history lesson, and it left a deep imprint on me and confronted me with some of my own prejudices, and it was transformative. I want to be the kind of person that listens to what it feels like for somebody to live in our city. So when I think of the hearings that happened this last year, I think that's good. I think it's a really good. I don't think it's a waste of time for people in positions of power making decisions to listen to their citizens about what it feels like to live in our city and how their day-to-day experience unfolds, so that those voices are included in the conversation. So absolutely, accessibility, I think, is one of those things. I believe that how our minority communities, are the BIPOC community, like we need to be listening to folks, whether it's, and I think
Yeah.
Calgary's getting some of this right, like the fact that you can go on the city website on a variety, and it's in different languages, and I think obviously we have a long ways to go.
Well, I was just gonna say, isn't that interesting how we don't really see these things until they're kind of put in front of us, and then you sort of have to think about yourself and your actions and your past, and
Yeah,
you end up seeing things differently.
yeah,
One of the interesting programs that's sort of come about in the last couple of years, from my perspective, is a few counselors like Counselor Farrell have done a day or an afternoon where they would go around the city in a wheelchair to
hmm,
see the accessibility challenges in the
amazing.
city.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that's fabulous. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's in a wheelchair not that long ago, and one of the comments he made was, Evan, when you need to realize that when you make investments in infrastructure and the built form that help with accessibility, you're not just helping people with reduced mobility because of special needs. You're helping our senior population. You're helping the mom with the stroller. That really helped. Like it opened the door a little wider for me to see how important those kinds of decisions are. I think it can be easy when you're in the middle of crisis and when we're looking at budget line items that aren't quite adding up anymore, and we have the stress of that, to let those lessons and to let those needs and concerns kind of go away. And I certainly would not want to be a part of that. I'd want to continue to advocate for people.
Loving hearing that. I think there's
Yeah,
lots of things we could work on from that perspective together, should that time come.
awesome.
You mentioned those two words, built form.
Yeah,
And that's sort of become a more popular buzzword around the city these days with the whole debate around the guidebook and densification. So
yeah.
where do you think the future of this Calgary lies in terms of
Okay.
densification? How do we do that in a smart, thoughtful way?
Yeah. I mean, I hope you've got some answers.
Yeah.
I think the guidebook is some good work headed in the right direction. And from other folks that I've talked to that know community like planning a bit more, like it's kind of common sense planning from a variety of angles. I think the conversation around it is tragic. I think the fact that people were finding out about some of the implications of this, and it felt like the city maybe was hiding certain ramifications from them, is tragic. So I certainly hope the guidebook becomes a useful tool. And I think it's kind of poised right now to continue to be a useful tool to help the city transition some of these older neighborhoods to where they need to go. But at the same time, we need to be listening to the people of Calgary and not being so heavy-handed about what happens, where, when, and
Ha.
why. So
See, that was one of my bigger problems reading the document, was it seemed very prescriptive instead of being a guideline for planning, which I'll be honest with you, the new document that PUD just approved did improve on this, I believe, but the original guidebook for great communities seemed very much like these are the options you
right,
have,
yeah,
and that's sort of going to be the way it works moving forward, whether that works for your community or not.
yeah, yeah. I know one of the things I heard was that neighborhood local, which was kind of when you looked at, say, like the North Hill area plan, which was most of it, that wasn't along one of the corridor streets and the connector streets. So as soon
Yeah,
as you get into the residential, it's just all neighborhood local, allowed for too much, right? So it didn't allow for a sense of consistency for these neighbors where they had a sense that at any time, if their next door neighbor moved out and somebody with a special interest bought it and decided to turn it into something else, they essentially could. So it kind of left them on a feeling like eggshells and no certainty. I mean, ultimately, we do want a mixed use. We do want complete
oh,
community.
for sure.
We do want to densify, because a denser city is a more financially like tenable city. Like we're headed towards a massive infrastructure gap where our budget is going to be monopolized by maintaining the infrastructure in Calgary, because we built so much of it during boom times, and in these lean times we've probably I haven't seen the line items, but I don't think it's an erroneous assumption to think that we're probably pulling some money out of maintaining some of that
Exactly.
infrastructure.
And
So we're in trouble.
not to mention every piece of extra sprawl you end up doing
Yeah,
is higher cost of utilities. It's stretching your emergency and first responders further. It just makes the city more expensive and less safe to live in. So obviously you do need to densify, and it's funny you mentioned complete communities, because growing up as a 90s kid when I was younger, dating myself as a bit of a youngin there, we lived in a community called Maitland Heights where you could walk to the store and walk to the train and walk to the park. And it's these communities where these things are walking distance that makes the community more livable. Um, and if it's something you're passionate about, it also could help the city reach its climate goals as well. So
Absolutely, yes, for sure. Yeah, I'm quite proud of our pathway system. I know lots of folks feel that we've spent too much money on it. Well, I mean, I went for a bike ride last year with my son from Mahogany all the way down the river valley to the East Village. That was quite a hike. But boy, do we have we have some great pathways now, so that folks can utilize that when it makes sense to do so. So certainly would want to be maintaining that, because they are quite great.
The pathway system can be a bit inconsistent though in some of the older neighborhoods, like
I've heard that,
in
yeah.
Bowness and things up here. The maintenance is maybe a little bit lagging, and those are some everyday things that I'm kind of passionate about. These
That's good.
small little infrastructure things that
Yeah.
we maybe seem to be ignoring in favor of these more grandiose visions. Not that those aren't important. You have to be aspirational, but you still have to do things that help people every day.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of the downtown, though, since you just kind of briefly touched on the East Village,
You're hitting all the big ones. Let's do it.
yeah.
Let's do it, Jacob.
Thoughts on the downtown strategy, event center, all that kind of fun stuff?
Yeah, I sure hope we can figure out a way to make some of like as many of these projects happen as quick as possible. But with obviously it has to make sense. Pragmatism has to win out in all of this, and we can't be pulling it from places that don't make sense. So I think private sector is going to be huge. I mean, obviously they are asking for more money for the event center, and the city's going nope at this point. I sure hope. Like I when I think of the downtown plan, when I think of the event center, the BMO Center, the Arts Commons, I think these are all important cogs in a world-class city. I mean, one of the things that was learned from the Amazon pitch when CED did it, I've talked to some folks, was that like these touches end up being quite important when you're selling Calgary to large corporations, right? Like these are the things that they ask about, and so we need to have plans for them. So we have plans for them. It's just going to be making sure that we don't bring them on board too quickly and at the expense of some things that
while we have to be responsible, it's still, you still have to build these projects in order to attract talent and to have a thriving business climate.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when I think of the ones that are there right now, I sure hope we can get a couple of them up in short order. Like I'm pretty excited that the Art Commons is kind of taking its first steps.
That's broken ground.
Yeah, like we're on our way. So I look forward to a Calgary with those pieces in place where we're able to have world-class functions where Comic-Cons and these kinds of things, and when we can have cultural events right outside our Muni building and the old town hall in that Art Commons space that's been revitalized. That's pretty enticing. I look forward to those days.
Right before we went live here, we were talking about how COVID has made a lot of things more challenging from
Yeah,
a campaign perspective, but it's also obviously made things more challenging for the city economically, and it's changed how people are working. So what do you think are some of the lessons we can take from this heck of a year we've all been through? Because
yeah.
it's been a year.
It has been a year, a year and then some. Uh, for me, the biggest one is just the power of local. Like I was just today went on a run with a good friend of mine, and he was talking about like they were looking to move before, and now because of COVID, they've kind of refound the love for this neighborhood, and now they also don't. They've kind of retooled work, so they're not commuting downtown as often. So I think the role of neighborhoods, and rightfully so, is going to be highlighted coming out of the other side of COVID. I think that's going to be to our benefit. When I think of how we can navigate some of the tougher things that are ahead of us, the neighborhood is the agent for change. Like it's small enough to organize, and you're it's like it's large enough to organize and make an impact, and it's small enough to be a known character within it, right? Where, oh, Jacob, I know Jacob, right? And
Even
so I think we need to realize that and live right into that.
well, even like within this whole campaign process and in the debates on some of these bigger issues, like the guidebook and the future of densification in the city, we've seen how powerful grassroots neighborhood like community bodies can be
Yeah,
in this debating process and mobilizing to make change.
yeah.
So I think that's absolutely an excellent point. Now, some may kind of dither as to whether that's entirely a grassroots movement, but that's another topic.
Well,
Um,
we can go right down to the block. That's pretty grassrootsy. I think that's almost as
yeah,
granular as you can get for civic organizing. You know,
for sure.
get down to where we have somebody that's taking care of each block and helping neighbors connect and building up the social fabric at that level. That would be something. Have you heard of Abundant Community in Edmonton?
That rings a bell, but can you elaborate on it some? I don't think
Yeah.
I'm super familiar.
So I've heard it called a software upgrade for their like community leagues, where you put it in and you have somebody help find block connectors on every street, and they help kind of cultivate that small town connected feel by being a point person, a listener, and a party person. So they help network the streets and a lot of streets just have these people doing these things naturally, but sometimes people need a nudge and some encouragement and a few
Well,
resources and training, right? So
that's just fascinating because that
yeah,
would lead to any number of volunteer initiatives, I would think. If you wanted to get something going to help the community, that would make things so much easier.
yeah,
Like before the lockdown happened, I was planning on doing, and hopefully we still will, but I was planning on doing food drives in each of the communities in my ward to help
wow,
people that are food insecure from the
wow,
economy and from COVID.
yeah,
And something like that would make organizing that kind of event so much easier.
I love it. Yeah, for sure. You should check it out. And actually, the Alliance for the Common Good in Calgary here now has somebody that's looking to kind of embed the organizing of abundant communities in Calgary as well. So starting to pick up some steam here.
Excellent. Um, so you mentioned you did some volunteering outside of being a pastor. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So when I got to the neighborhood, I immediately, so I was still, I would have been an employed pastor at that point as well. Immediately got involved in something called the volunteer committee in Mahogany here. And I started by doing youth events. That was something I had done previously. And then just as I was enthusiastic and involved and capable, when you're in a volunteer organization, they start giving you more and more rope. so before I knew it, I was
that hopefully you don't hang yourself with.
Exactly. Yeah. Thankfully I didn't there. I got to the point where I was, the chair of that volunteer committee, and then it led to a part-time job at the HOA, and ultimately led me to get into the work that I'm doing now. I just fell in love with neighborhood work. I love just like listening to you talk about organizing folks to fight food insecurity. I mean, when it's amazing what some motivated people with altruistic hearts can do. And these people we need more of them. And
for
I know there are,
sure. It's just the right thing to do, especially now with, again, everything we've all been through. There's so many people that need help, and we both have, it seems like, for a while in our various platforms, have a platform to do these good things. So I think it's sort of incumbent upon us with a platform to try and help people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So getting back to a little more hardball here, what is there's been recent stories about potentially people's personal information possibly being compromised as a result of us candidates getting voter lists. I'd like to know your stance there.
Yeah. I'm definitely not on. I definitely don't want information getting in the hands of somebody that could potentially mobilize to violence. That's a scary prospect. But I mean, this is one of those tensions in life. I also don't want to erode our democratic processes either. I think one of the things I've learned since getting involved, like I would have had a pretty typical Albertan view of politics, I think. Like from my family of origin, I viewed it with a sense of suspicion. So not unlike you, where like you followed it for a long period of time and it was this natural progression. I kind of kept it at an arm's length. And it wasn't until I met a couple of leaders in the political sphere and went, wow, these are good, genuine, outward, just want to help and are genuine human beings. That's kind of what changed me. So when I was given an invitation to come look under the hood, and then I found people that were similarly wired to me, that's when I was like, oh wow. And ever since then, and even before, I'm a bit of an optimist, and I believe in this thing that we're doing called democracy. I think are the people that are in political office, it's a tough job.
It's easy to be cynical, but you have to feel a little bit optimistic to want to throw your head into this ring, because it can chew you up and spit you out real fast too. Hey?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it was just one of those. I feel a sense of duty to at least try. And so when it comes to the voter list, I think we should find a way so that we can do it, like protect the people that need to be protected, but also let's protect the process, the democratic process.
And an interesting thing I'd like to bring up is whatever elections Calgary and council end up deciding, I will support that. And to be clear, I don't want this person, and we're obviously not going to name them because no platforms for you, good sir. you've had enough attention. But I don't want this person to have this information, especially when they have threatened to take less than savory actions against people that are on the front lines of a pandemic, and in other ways as well back in the past. However, these voter lists do make a campaign easier, and not having them can potentially be beneficial to incumbent candidates as well.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about.
Yeah, definitely favors the more established. I mean, I've heard that, the take that ultimately it's the data that you collect at the doors that's the most valuable. And I don't know.
Absolutely.
I've never done it before, but I kind of tend to agree or think that that's probably true.
Oh yeah, I will gladly give up these voter lists to keep information safe, because ultimately I am gonna see a lot of you beautiful people in Ward 1 at your doors, hopefully, or at community events, and I'll learn things that way.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
just a couple more things here, I think. And so
after, are you going to go through and answer all these questions too?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure you have in other forums. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Normally when our co-host is here, and for any of you listening and wondering where Jason is today, it'll have second scheduling conflict.
Oh
He'll
no.
be back next episode. But
Sounds
the
good.
reason I bring up Jason is normally when we get into these sort of question and answer segments, he ends up being the moderator, so to speak, and we both give our, and I've been trying my best to fill in with my opinions as well.
No, you're
but
doing
it's
a
a
great
little
job.
easier with that
Yeah.
person bouncing the question back at you.
Agreed.
So what do you think is, where do you see Calgary in 10 years? Like, we're hopefully gonna be making decisions for at least a few years, so we have to have a view of the future. So
Yeah, diversified quite a bit more. Like, I think we'll still have a good energy sector, but I mean, it'll be more diversified for sure in terms of how that energy is found and made. I believe that Calgary will still be an incredibly civically proud place to be, and with lots of volunteers and amazing grassroots initiatives happening in neighborhoods and neighbors looking after each other. Obviously, it'll be a lot more digitally savvy and connected places. We're quick adapters. We're innovative here. I think we will make some of those shifts quicker than other places on our planet, just due to our workforce and the high education and the young population that we have here. So I think there'll be a lot of change in 10 years, and
I don't know about you, but I'm hoping that new council will be able to attract more of these tech companies and startups and small businesses, so that we can be sort of on the leading edge of that, to make up for the gap potentially left from the energy sector. Because even post boom and price, or post collapse, sorry, and post COVID, I don't think it necessarily come back the way it was.
Yeah,
I don't think they're gonna be filling the office towers downtown to quite the same degree as they are right now.
No, you're right. Yeah, we need that. Absolutely. It's neat to see the early successes as they roll in. And even, I think I saw Minister Schweitzer say the other day that we're no longer even in Calgary, emerging tech sector. We're a stage or two past that now. I mean, obviously we have a long ways to go. One of my good neighbors popped up Alberta IoT, Internet of Things. And I know there's a lot of really cool tech ecosystem stuff starting to happen in Calgary. And I think that entrepreneurial spirit that we just so is a part of the blood. It's in
I
our blood
think
here.
with a combination of this sort of emerging tech sector, or more than emerging if we're to believe the minister, and the whole changing face of work with more telecommuting, we might be able to convert some of the office space that we have into some affordable housing as well, which is interesting.
Mhm. Have you seen the drawings for the downtown plan, to kind of revitalize the bottom floors, turn them into restaurants and open
I
air atrium?
have. I'm
Yeah,
interested to see if and how quickly, the key is how quickly that renovation can take
yeah,
place,
yeah,
because if it's this slow grinding process, sort of like any renovation along 17th Avenue or utility upgrades, where it just shuts down the walkability for months and months and years,
yeah,
then that's not going to be as effective. But
yeah,
if we can find a way to effectively phase these things in a cost-effective way, I think they can be really interesting.
yeah, for sure. Well, I think one thing I do like about it is the way that they're focusing on doing it in partnership. Um, I think granting is definitely one of the most powerful tools that any government, any governance structure has. When granting goes wrong, not so good. But I think good granting systems and if it goes the way they're talking about in terms of catalyzing a whole new bunch of investment in our downtown. And I've heard that strategy has worked really well in places um, like Kansas City and Detroit, to focus in on a languishing area of a core or another neighborhood, to pop up a new place of vitality, and then things spread out around that. Um, I yeah, I would love to see that. I think
On the same sort of note, let's talk parking. Parking in
sure.
downtown's kind of famous for being either awful and or expensive. Now,
Yeah,
one of the main selling points to some people of the Greenline is um it's gonna reduce the number of potentially personal vehicles on the road. But even as it's doing this, um cars are still the most popular form of transportation on the road right now. So how do we make the downtown more convenient to travel in?
Greenline.
Well, green line, yes, but I think we have to also find some more ways to adapt surface parking, because not everybody's gonna take the train
No, it's
or
true.
or an e-scooter or the bike lanes. These are great options. They're
Yeah,
great to have,
yeah,
but I still think we have to find ways to make parking and driving downtown less of a headache.
yeah, for sure. And especially in the short run, I think it's going to be important for keeping downtown a viable place to do business and place where people want to, send their employees back to. So I think you're absolutely right. In the short run, strategies to reduce the costs, and also to make sure they're accessible and there's the amount needed. Hopefully, I'm optimistic that like the volume we do have in terms of parking stalls down there, because it's not all going to fill up tomorrow, or as soon as all the jabs are in the arm. It's going to take a while. I'm optimistic that we can find that balance. But I think you're right. I think we do need a strategy to deal with that.
It's that's another interesting one from previous conversation Jason and I had about the idea that, are we gonna see this ridership boom on Calgary Transit once enough people do have their vaccinations? I think short term you might see that, but I think longer term that's gonna be a bit of a slower process.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's good to be sober and
yeah.
Use sober judgment on that.
So getting back to the whole your evolving journey with regards to people of color and other minorities and people with disabilities, that echoes a lot of maybe some of the debate around how our police are funded and things like that. With this journey you've started, how have your views evolved on that one?
I think, I'll go back to I think it's a good thing that City Council had the hearings, and I listening to the special meeting of council when Chief Neufeld talked about the steps that were being taken and the tone and tenor of CPS. I thought I saw goodness in that, but I also have friends that are police officers and have talked about the culture of the CPS in and around at the same time as the marches are happening and the movements are happening, and I think that's one of those tricky places where naturally we can find antagonisms and reasons to be suspicious of our fellow man. I think there's good decisions being made in that, and I think smart people are doing their best. So when I think of the community investment framework, I think that work's coming to council here pretty quick. I want to give it the benefit of the doubt, and I want to believe that when the CPS was saying that they picked up work that they didn't mean to pick up along the way because they were the only one that you can call in the middle of the night, that's actually they believe that, and they're not just doing that because of the political climate. That it's actually good, solid work that's being done to redistribute services in a way that's going to make everything better. So the whole defund conversation,
this is
like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about Calgary getting better.
It's a fascinating conversation because I was just going to touch on that. The whole defund sort of movement is complex in itself because you have different voices within that, but ultimately we're not seeing the same asks as maybe we see down south, where people are calling for the complete disbandment of police departments. I don't really think that's what people are asking for here. No. But because the name is similar, there's going to be a lot of that bleed from down south.
Totally. And the spin is similar, right? Like, it's a spin. I mean, there's certain counselors that use every opportunity to trot out that word because they know it'll play well, which I just don't enjoy that, right? I think it's the way that the politics of south of the border have begun to diffuse their way up here. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm running. I just think I despise it. And I think there's a better way, and I want to stand up to it. So
what's also interesting is we had in an early episode, our first or second episode, we had Mike Baker, the vice president of the Calgary Police Association, on, and he was saying we sort of have to change the discussion around what this whole thing is about, because from his perspective, and I'll agree mine as well, the police don't just do enforcement. There are these community initiatives like community liaison officers, school resource officers, the Guardian program, PACT and DPACT, that do try to fund or fight these root cause things, but everybody, it's painted as a very black and white issue right now. And I think the conversation sort of needs to change.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I'm on that page with you, Jacob, for sure.
So, getting on to some lighter things, since we've talked about
this has been good. It's been meaty.
We've been talked a lot of the meat stuff. What are some of your favorite things to do in the city, and things in your ward maybe that people don't talk about that they should?
Well, I'll start with, this is not going to be something that people don't know about. I love the River Valley. I discovered it in ways that I hadn't last year through the pandemic. As I just got outside, and I began to run as just part of staying active and getting outside, and began to weave my way through the River Valley. Boy, do we have an amazing, like the Fish Creek Park area, and the River Valley system. And I really just explored that southern corridor. I've seldom venture.
We really do downtown. Have some beautiful parts of our city, no?
Yeah, right. For sure. Yeah, so that's been huge. And then, being close to the mountains, my family and I have spent a ton of time hiking this last year, just to connect as a family and to de-stress and not have cabin fever. So that's been massive for us.
I'm from Tuscany. We're close enough to the mountains that sometimes when it snows, it feels like we're there because we're the first to get it and it stays the longest. But yeah, it's absolutely a beautiful part of living here, is being so close to that bit of incredible nature that we have.
Yeah. And maybe the one thing I'll say that about Ward 12 that not a lot of people may know, or might be a good fact, is, I think there's the language around lake communities is, those, developers just did that to sell houses in the boonies, and maybe it's a bunch of yuppies living around in there pretending that they're, they have this great lifestyle living around these man-made lakes. What I've experienced in living in my lake community, Mahogany, and then witnessing how it's impacted these other suburbs, is it provides this key focal point and infrastructure that just brings people together. I think that's pretty amazing. Like you run into the same people when you go, especially if you're bringing kids, because kids are great connectors. There are places to hold events. There are places to, do a swim. There are places to. It's amazing when you have complete communities with these features that people gravitate towards, that pull them out of their houses, and then they meet each other. And because they're already in proximity, they're already in a neighborhood. They're meeting people that are from their neighborhood, which then bleeds back into their connections and relationships.
Absolutely.
So I'm a big fan of lake communities. So anyone wants to say something nasty about a lake community, you and I are, they're awesome.
One of the things I wanted to talk about, because I just recently saw these announcements from some of my community associations, and part of the show here is to talk about your neck of the woods, because there are these community events and initiatives that maybe not a lot of people know about, because not everybody follows the community calendars and all these fun things that get released that end up on the bottom of your mail pile. But starting May 19th, if you're in Scenic Acres, for example, at the community center, they're gonna be having food truck days, and we have some great food in this city. We're not really known as a food city, but you can find some excellent places to eat here. And in bouncing off what you were saying, starting in June, there's going to be a brand new farmers market up here in the Northwest at Triwood Arena. So it's these kind of hidden gem things that make communities really fun to live in.
Yeah, absolutely. I was working on with a team of folks trying to pop up a market, and then we were getting close, and then COVID hit. So kind of took the wind out of our sales. But sounds like we've got some exemptions now, hey, so that they can. Well, they're letting them go back up.
And I just saw the announcement from the CA, so they might just at this time be being hopeful that restrictions relax a little bit. I don't know all the details there, but it's exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
And then obviously, like you said, it's these community gathering spots that are really the things a lot of people think about when they're talking about a great place to live, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So take for example, we have up here in Tuscany where I live, the Tuscany Club. It's a recreation center, but it's for Tuscany residents. And it's this place where you can take your kids for swim and play tennis and play these court sports and things like that wouldn't be the first thing you think about, but it's just this excellent piece of programming that people need to participate in.
That's awesome. Yeah, we have some stuff that we look forward to every year that we're lamenting the loss of. We have down here in Mahogany, we have what we call Beach Blaster. So it's run basically every year since its inception, except for last year where there was a modified one, where we just pack the beach with people, and there's beach volleyball and orb balls that, those big inflatable ones that you can climb inside. Yeah. And dance party stuff like doing Zumbas and things of this nature, and snow cones and all. It's amazing. It's just absolutely phenomenal. So, and then the other thing I just mentioned that we look forward to. So it's a public holiday for me and for my kids at the same level as like Christmas, Neighbor Day. Like when Nenshi instituted Neighbor Day after the floods, like we latched on hard. And then of course, like the abundant community stuff, I ended up getting something like that going in my neck of the woods. So I was very invested in neighbors, and then Neighbor Day, obviously. And it's the best. It's just the absolute best. You shut down your street, you plan amazing activities with the people you live around, and then your street will never be the same. Throw a block party. Like a block party can change your life because you will know the names, the stories.
For sure. Get out and talk to some folks, man. That's greatest.
So good.
You made me think of one of the lighter bits of COVID, and it was the fire truck birthdays. Did you have any down there during the first start of
there was definitely some parades that made their way through our neighborhood for sure.
Yeah, we had some of those too, and you couldn't help but like go to the door and say like, "Oh, whose birthday is it? The trucks are here," kind of deal.
Totally. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So ultimately, whether you win, lose, or whatever happens in the election, what's something you want people to take away from what you have to say?
Great question. I mean, just given where we are in the history of Calgary, and some of the things that are swirling around, the negativity, and everybody's kind of on edge and frustrated, and Calgary is not at the place that we remember. And
On edge, you mean it's not all sunshine and rainbows here? I hadn't noticed.
yeah, I think my hope would be that if that what I can leave, the campaign can leave, is to look for what's good, right? Like if you start with what's strong and what's good, it really changes your perspective. And I think we run the risk through this election cycle and heading like we run the risk of things getting worse in the public, and those elected officials, they are, as much as they need to be smart, they need to work hard, they need to do all those things, they are mascots almost, right? And if our culture in our city ends up becoming toxic and negative and combative, it's going to bleed into a whole bunch of other things. So that's what I hope
Well,
to impart, is a sense of positivity and looking for what's good, building on what's good, because there's an awful lot of good in this city.
oh, we just spent like 10 minutes talking about so
Yeah,
much
yeah,
great
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
There's a reason we love living here, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
that's another reason, like, a podcast like this is important, because yes, I want to get my message out. Yes, we want to talk about the election, but I also want to tell people like what's going on around the city and what great things are
Mm,
happening, because
yeah, yeah.
there's always great stuff going on.
Love it, Jake. Love it, Jacob.
um
We're similarly wired that way, it sounds like.
so have you ever um done like a podcast or anything like this before, or is this like a new experience for you, man?
No, I've been on a variety now. I mean, just for the election, two or three.
Were you on with Zach already?
Yeah, yeah. I was on with Zach. I was on with Danielle, and
I
for
did my shot with Danielle as well. Do you know if they've posted those or not?
I haven't seen anything as of yet. Although I haven't really been looking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoy, like, it's kind of, I enjoy these conversations. Like I'm it was funny. I got the soundbite that Zach pulled out of our talk was me humming and hawing over the small business. So I had a couple of people on my campaign going, "Evan, your messaging's got to be tighter." Like they're they're worried about what was pulled out. But I really felt like it was just a really genuine, great conversation. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed
see,
it with him. So
I get that. I totally do. I get the you gotta be on message and everything.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think people can tune that out too. I think
yeah,
they remember more genuine conversations like this a lot
totally.
more than potentially you being on message all the time sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. So if anyone watched that one and watched this one, small businesses are super important, and they're the
They
cornerstone.
are. They
They're the
are
cornerstone of our
absolutely.
economy.
And we've talked about it a bunch on here too.
I,
Y'all know they're the heartbeat of the economy.
I,
But I'm
I,
not gonna hit you with buzzwords every time we talk on here.
I had gone, I'm not the expert in small businesses, so I'm gonna talk to, like, I'd been like,
Yeah.
I was like chewing on my cheek and like thinking about my answer, and that's what he clipped and put it out on Instagram. So the one gal on my campaign was like, "Evan, come on." Oh, funny.
Oh, isn't that stuff fun
Yeah.
when something like that happens and then you just have to eat it for the
Yeah,
next little while?
totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, we could obviously go on talking for hours and hours here, but I think it's a good time to wrap it up and maybe get some final messages in. So as always, I'm going to encourage everybody to get vaccinated. Get your
Yeah.
shots, because the
Yeah.
quicker we get our shots, the quicker we can start all these great community events without any of the doubt, and the quicker we can get back to normal and
Yes,
quit
preach.
staying at home. And then vote. Get out and vote in October. Even if you don't vote for us, please vote for us. But even if you don't, exercise your democratic rights, everybody. Touching on those Ward 1 community events for a second, go check out Food Truck Day. That's gonna be some delicious food. That's every third Wednesday of the month, starting on May 19th. And starting June 1st, go visit the Trywood Farmers Market. Evan, do you want to add any closing things here?
I was gonna joke that I should just open my document and read all my key messages, but I closed it, so I'm not even gonna bother. I echo the same things that you've just said. Yeah, I agree. I think you closed it off perfectly. Jacob, this was super fun. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
As usual, if you want us to talk about a topic, or you want me to ask any candidates about any specific issues, feel free to reach out to me on social media. Jacob for Ward 1. You haven't plugged your website, Evan. Do you want to plug it?
www.evanspencer.ca. And I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Spencer4, just spell it, no word or letter or number rather, Spencer412. Spencer412. The 12 is a number though.
And I'll always answer your questions on social media. That's what I'm here for. This is supposed to be a conversation, so let's have one. By the way, Evan, love your logo. Thought that was really cool.
Thank you.
But anyway, guys, that's what's happening in your neck of the woods for another week.